All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Let's begin. We're actually going to spend a little bit less time on Rabbi Tzaddik this morning in order to be able to get a little bit of a bigger head start of a big daf ahead of us today. But we'll spend some time with the Rebbe this morning. Page Kuf Nun Vav. So remember, again, continuing in our topic in Os Samich Dalid of B'derech Sha'adam Rosei Leilech Molichin Oso. That again, if I have true conviction and true dedication to my particular path, and I think that my path is the Ratzon Hashem, is the true will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ribono Shel Olam will help me down that path, even if that path may not be the true Ratzon Hashem, the true will of the Ribono Shel Olam. So Moshe gives another example of this. Page Kuf Nun Vav, left-hand column, in the Biurei Chasidus. V'hochacha lekach, she'Hashem yisbarach nisnaik im ha'adam kefi ma she'adam atzmo mevin, and the proof to this idea, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu conducts himself with a person in a way that a person believes is emes. A person believes is the derech hayashar. Gamim emes he shederech zu eino yishar be'enei Hashem atzmo. Even if it turns out that the Ribono Shel Olam may not feel that this particular derech is the right derech, halotira be'elio. Look, after all, with Eliyahu Hanavi. What happened with Eliyahu Hanavi? Sha'amar al-Achav, Chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Imiyah Hashanim Ha'ila Tal Umater. Supposed to remember again, Eliyahu Hanavi, after an incredible fallout with Achav. Achav was the king of Malchus Yisrael, who was unfortunately a terrible Oved Avodah Zarah. Achav, the real tragedy of Achav was not his sinful behavior. The real tragedy of Achav was that he was so close to doing tshuva a couple of different times and yet failed to do so. In any event, Eliyahu Hanavi has a dramatic fallout with Achav, and as a result he tells Achav there will be no rain in Eretz Yisrael. There will be no rain. Va'amru Chazal, shebikesh me'HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheyitno lo v'na shamayim ha'mafteach shal matar v'nasnu lo. Now, the Gemara says that there are gimel maftechos, and there are three keys which HaKadosh Baruch Hu never dispenses to an emissary. And one of those keys is the maftech shel gishamim, the key of rain. Yet Eliyahu Hanavi requested from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be handed over the key to rain. Because remember again, how was Eliyahu Hanavi able to make such a declaration like this? That there will be no rain for some amount of years. Well, the only way to make a declaration of that like that is if you control the rain. So he asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu kiviyachol for the key to rain. V'nasnu lo. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu in fact gave him the key. Gave him the key to rain. He goes on, Va'atzar esirides hageshem shalosh shanim. And as a result, Eliyahu withheld the rain for 3 years. Shamru zal shekiviyachol haya kasha lefanav yizbarach. The Gemara says it was very difficult for HaKadosh Baruch Hu that there shouldn't be rain for 3 years. In other words, what the Gemara is saying is, it's not necessarily the case that the Ribono Shel Olam agreed with Eliyahu's decision. Not so pasha that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that this is a good idea, but again, Eliyahu Hanavi felt this was the proper course of action. He felt that it was the Ratzon Hashem, and so amazingly enough, the Ribono Shel Olam gave him over the key to the Gishamim. Shahare Azad Lo Masar Es HaMafteach HaGishamim L'Shum Adam Yom Shebara Es Olamo, because never before in the history of the world did HaKadosh Baruch Hu ever give over the key to rain to any human being. V'sivei Hashem Yisbarach she'Eliyahu Hanavi ba'atzmo yirtze lahachzir es mafteach hageshem kedei sheyekabel es hamafteach shel tchias hamesim. So interestingly enough, so remember again, without getting into all the details right now, Eliyahu Hanavi wanted to perform an act of tchias hamesim, resurrection of the dead. Well, that's another key. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you don't get two keys. So if you want the key of tchias hamesim, you'll have to give back the key to rain. Okay, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately gets his keys back. V'yafal pikein, amar lo le'Eliyahu, lech mizeh, ufanisa lecha kedma, page kof non zayin, v'nistarta b'nachal kris asher pnei hayarden. Va'azara Hashem yisbarach b'miyuchad, li'saser mipnei achav b'nachal kris, v'chiyeu b'derech nes, she'u arvim mevim lo lechem. So remember, again, I've said we know, Achav did not take kindly to this withholding of the rain. Right? He did not take kindly to this. Actually, he ordered Eliyahu Hanavi killed. Eliyahu Hanavi hides, right? He hides in a place called Nachal, the Chris ravine, Nachal Chris. Nachal Chris, and there HaKadosh Baruch Hu sustained Achav miraculously. Every day, ravens would bring him bread and bring him meat. Amazingly enough, where they bring it to him from no other place other than Achav's table. They literally took food from Achav's palace and brought it to sustain Eliyahu Hanavi Nachal Chris. He goes on, V'hari ilu haya melech Achav motzi Eliyahu Hanavi haya Achav machricho levatel satziras hageshem kirtzon Hashem shelo kasha davar zeh ukimo she'achin haya achakach shenire Eliyahu la'achav v'yard hageshem. So interestingly enough, the Rebbe says, had Achav found Eliyahu, he would not have necessarily killed him, but he would have gone ahead and compelled him to walk back the decree. And in fact, again, you know who else wanted to walk back the decree? The Ribono Shel Olam. Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't want this decree. Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't want the withholding of rain. Because remember, again, with the withholding of rain for 3 years, many innocent people suffered as well. The Ribono Shel Olam did not want the withholding of the rain. But again, he says, "Ukimosha achin haya acharkach, ukimosha asamalach Yoram ben Achav leElisha Hanavi, shebikesher leIspal Hashem al hamayim." Hare. So we'll say, what do you see from this? Da'af she'ein ratzon Hashem ba'atziras hageshem. Even though it was not the ratzon Hashem to go and withhold the rain, kinsia ba'ad Eliyahu lischabe mipnei Achav b'derach neis. You will say, see, here's what's interesting. You see, the Ribono Shel Olam didn't want two things. Number one, he didn't want the withholding of rain. Number two, he certainly did not want the withholding of rain for a prolonged period of time, which is exactly what occurred for 3 years. But yet, what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He did two things. Number one, he gives Eliyahu the keys, the key. Number two, he hides Eliyahu for a sustained, right? And he hides Eliyahu and sustains Eliyahu for a prolonged amount of time. So when you put this all together, what you see over here is the Ribono Shel Olam facilitating someone's course of action, even though the Ribono Shel Olam did not agree with it. So this once again bolsters Rabbi Tzaddik's primary thesis, which I will say really has two manifestations. Number one, that sometimes if a person feels that the particular derech they are engaged in is the proper derech, is the Ratzon Hashem, even if it's not, the Ribono Shel Olam will go ahead and help them along that path. And number two, just because a person sees success in a particular path, in a particular endeavor, does not necessarily mean that the Ribono Shel Olam is actually happy with it. And I will say it's that second part that's much more meaningful and significant for us. Because when God chooses to help a person, when God doesn't choose to help a person, that seems to be a more complicated discussion. Because there are plenty of times where HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want something to occur and therefore prevents it from occurring. That's Maisim B'chol Yom. What's important for us and what's kind of the takeaway from this, Rabbi Tzaddik is constantly reinforcing, is don't assume that success in life is indicative of divine favor. In other words, obviously, I can't be successful without HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowing me to be successful. But don't allow success to be translated as God is happy with the path I am taking. Because sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not. And it's important to understand, which I will say makes things so much more complicated. Because if you think about it, life in general would be so much easier if I could live with the following approach. If I'm doing well, right, I'm succeeding, that means God's happy. I'm not succeeding, that means God's unhappy. That's a great way to live life because it's pretty clear. Instead, what Rabbi Tzaddik is doing is really muddying the waters for us, right? And telling us, no, you can be wildly successful in life. It's not necessarily a sign that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy with what you're doing. Your success may be for a variety of different reasons, but a person requires perpetual cheshbon hanefesh to try to really understand, is the path that I'm going down the true and correct path in life? All right, we'll stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Meretz Hashem tomorrow. Finish up the Os Meretz Hashem tomorrow.